I know that sounds impossible. We've got SpaceX, Mars missions, and dreams of interstellar civilization. But here's the crushing truth. The universe has built a prison we can't escape, not because we lack technology or courage, but because physics, biology, and cosmic forces have made Earth the only world we can survive on. Those stars you see at night, they might as well be painted in the sky. Today, I'm showing you exactly why humanity is trapped on this pale blue dot forever, and why that reality should terrify and inspire you in equal measure. If you're fascinated by the profound questions of our cosmic destiny and want to explore the universe's greatest mysteries, make sure to subscribe to this channel and give a thumbs up. And one quick question: if you could discover the answer to one unsolved mystery in science, which one would you pick? Let me know in the comments down below. I will choose the most creative answer. Now let's begin. The dream of leaving Earth isn't new. From ancient myths of Icarus to modern science fiction, humans have always looked up and wondered, what if? But as our understanding of the universe has grown, so too has our awareness of the staggering challenges that await us beyond Earth's protective embrace. These aren't just engineering problems we can solve with enough time and money. They're fundamental barriers written into the laws of physics and the fragility of life itself. Start with the most immediate challenge, the tyranny of gravity. Earth's gravity well is like a cosmic prison, requiring enormous energy to escape. To reach orbit, a rocket must achieve a velocity of about 28,000 kilometers per hour. That's fast enough to circle the entire Earth in 90 minutes. But here's the catch. For every kilogram of payload you want to send to space, you need between 20 to 50 kilograms of fuel, depending on your rocket's efficiency. This exponential relationship, described by the Tsiolkovsky rocket equation, means that sending anything substantial into space requires massive amounts of resources. The Space Shuttle, one of humanity's most advanced spacecraft, weighed about 2,000 tons at launch. Of that, only about 100 tons actually made it to orbit. The rest was fuel and disposable components. Even with SpaceX's revolutionary reusable rockets, we're still bound by this fundamental physics. The energy required to lift mass out of Earth's gravity well is enormous, and there's no way around it without exotic technologies that may never exist. But escaping Earth's gravity is just the beginning of our problems. Once in space, we face an environment so hostile it seems specifically designed to kill us. The vacuum of space isn't just empty, it's an active threat to human life. Without atmospheric pressure, the water in your body would boil at body temperature, your blood would literally bubble, your lungs would collapse, and you'd lose consciousness in about 15 seconds. Death would follow within minutes. Even inside a spacecraft, the challenges multiply. Cosmic radiation bombards everything outside Earth's protective magnetosphere. On Earth, we're shielded by both our magnetic field and atmosphere, receiving about 2.4 millisieverts of radiation per year. On the International Space Station, astronauts receive about 160 millisieverts per year, nearly 70 times more. On a trip to Mars, astronauts would be exposed to about 300 millisieverts just during the journey. This radiation doesn't just increase cancer risk, it damages DNA, impairs cognitive function, and weakens the immune system. The recent data from NASA's twin study, comparing astronaut Scott Kelly, who spent a year in space with his identical twin Mark, who stayed on Earth, revealed disturbing changes. Scott's telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes, lengthened in space but then shortened dramatically upon return, accelerating his biological aging. His cognitive performance declined, his gut microbiome changed drastically, and he experienced significant bone and muscle loss despite rigorous exercise. And this was just from 1 year in low Earth orbit, still partially protected by Earth's magnetosphere. But perhaps the most insidious threat is gravity, or rather, the lack of it. Human bodies evolved over millions of years in Earth's gravitational field. Every system in our body, from our cardiovascular system to our bones, depends on gravity to function properly. In microgravity, astronauts lose about 1% of their bone mass per month. Their muscles atrophy despite hours of daily exercise. Fluids shift upward, causing faces to puff and increasing intracranial pressure, potentially leading to vision problems that can be permanent. The psychological challenges are equally daunting. Imagine being confined to a small space with a few other people for months or years, knowing that a single malfunction could kill everyone, that help is impossible, and that you're farther from home than any human has ever been. The Mars 500 experiment, which simulated a Mars mission on Earth, revealed significant psychological stress, depression, and crew conflicts, and the participants knew they could leave any time. Real space travel would be incomparably more stressful. The biological challenges extend far beyond what most people realize. Recent studies on the International Space Station have shown that bacteria and fungi behave differently in space. Many become more virulent and harder to kill. The common bacteria Staphylococcus aureus forms thicker biofilms in microgravity, making infections more dangerous. Meanwhile, our immune systems weaken dramatically. T-cell activation drops by 50%, making astronauts more susceptible to infections that would be minor on Earth. Imagine dealing with a serious infection millions of kilometers from the nearest hospital. Even more concerning are the reproductive challenges. No mammal has ever completed a full reproductive cycle in space, from conception to birth to adulthood. Mouse experiments on the ISS showed that while fertilization can occur, embryonic development is severely compromised. The lack of gravity disrupts cell division and organ formation. Radiation damages developing cells. If humans can't reproduce successfully in space, any dreams of multi-generational colony ships or self-sustaining off-world populations become impossible. The recent discovery of space anemia adds another layer to our biological constraints. Astronauts destroy about 50% more red blood cells in space than on Earth. That's 3 million cells per second instead of 2 million. This hemolysis continues throughout their stay in space and persists for months after return. The body compensates by producing more red blood cells, but this taxes the bone marrow and requires additional resources that would be scarce on long missions. Let's talk about the distances involved, because they're truly mind-boggling. The Moon, our nearest celestial neighbor, is about 384,000 kilometers away. That's already 10 times the circumference of Earth. Mars, the next feasible destination, varies between 55 million and 400 million kilometers from Earth, depending on orbital positions. At its closest, that's still 140 times farther than the Moon. Using current technology, a trip to Mars would take between 6 to 9 months, one way, but Mars is practically next door compared to other destinations. Proxima Centauri, the nearest star system, is 4.24 light-years away. That's 40 trillion kilometers. The Voyager 1 spacecraft, launched in 1977 and currently the farthest human-made object from Earth, is traveling at 17 kilometers per second. At that speed, it would take over 70,000 years to reach Proxima Centauri. Even if we could travel at 10% the speed of light, a feat requiring unimaginable amounts of energy, the journey would still take over 40 years. The energy requirements for interstellar travel are staggering. To accelerate a spacecraft the size of a small building to just 1% of light speed would require more energy than the entire human civilization currently uses in a year. To reach 10% of light speed, you'd need energy equivalent to converting several tons of matter entirely into energy, something only possible with antimatter, which we can currently produce only in quantities measured in individual atoms. Recent observations from the James Webb Space Telescope have revealed another sobering reality. Potentially habitable planets are even rarer than we thought. While we've discovered over 5,000 exoplanets, most are hostile to life as we know it. Hot Jupiters, super-Earths with crushing gravity, planets tidally locked to their stars with one side in eternal daylight and the other in eternal darkness. The few potentially habitable worlds we've found are so far away, they might as well be in another universe. Speaking of the universe, have you ever wondered how vast it really is? If so, I highly recommend my video called How Big is the Universe? In this video, learn how astronomers use telescopes like Hubble and James Webb, cosmic redshift, standard candles, and the cosmic microwave background to map the universe's vastness. Explore the cosmic web, galaxy clusters, dark matter, and the accelerating expansion driven by dark energy. Make sure to check it out after this video. The link is in the description and on the card above. If interstellar travel were possible, where is everybody? The galaxy is billions of years old. If even one civilization had developed practical interstellar travel millions of years ago, they should have colonized the entire galaxy by now. The fact that we see no evidence of this suggests that either we're alone, unlikely given the vast number of stars, or that interstellar travel is effectively impossible for biological beings. Consider the maintenance challenges of long-duration space travel. Everything breaks down eventually. On Earth, we have entire industries dedicated to maintenance and repair, access to raw materials, and the ability to manufacture replacement parts. In space, you're limited to what you bring with you or what you can somehow manufacture from available resources. The ISS, despite being only 400 kilometers from Earth and receiving regular supply missions, requires constant maintenance. Critical systems fail regularly. Without the ability to receive spare parts from Earth, it would become uninhabitable within years. The closed-loop life support problem is perhaps the most underappreciated challenge. Humans need water, oxygen, and food continuously. We produce waste continuously. On Earth, natural cycles handle this. Plants produce oxygen, bacteria break down waste, the water cycle purifies and redistributes water. Creating an artificial version of these cycles that works reliably for years or decades in a small spacecraft has proven nearly impossible. The biosphere. Two experiments in Arizona, despite being far larger than any spacecraft and having Earth's gravity and protection from radiation, failed to maintain a stable, self-sustaining environment for even 2 years. The psychological barriers to leaving Earth permanently are rooted in millions of years of evolution. Humans evolved in a specific environment, under blue skies, with a 24-hour day-night cycle, with seasons, weather, and the complex sensory inputs of a living biosphere. Studies on Antarctic research stations, submarines, and isolated communities show that prolonged separation from nature causes severe psychological distress. Depression, anxiety, cognitive decline, and even psychosis can result from extended periods in artificial environments. The overview effect experienced by astronauts who see Earth from space paradoxically reinforces our connection to our home planet rather than diminishing it. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell described it as a glimpse of divinity. Many astronauts return with a profound appreciation for Earth's fragility and uniqueness. Instead of making them want to leave Earth behind, seeing our planet from space makes them want to protect and cherish it. This psychological transformation suggests that the farther we get from Earth, the more we might yearn to return. Recent neurological studies have revealed that spaceflight causes structural changes in the brain. MRI scans of astronauts show that the brain shifts upward in the skull, compressing the top portions. The spaces filled with cerebrospinal fluid expand, potentially leading to long-term neurological issues. Some astronauts experience lasting vision problems due to increased intracranial pressure. These changes occur after just months in space. What would years or decades do to the human brain? The social dynamics of space colonization present insurmountable challenges. Human societies require diversity, culture, and room for growth and change. A Mars colony of even 1,000 people would have less genetic diversity than many endangered species. The social dynamics would be more like a prison than a functioning society. History shows us that isolated colonies often develop in unexpected and sometimes catastrophic ways. Without the moderating influence of broader human society and the ability to leave, if things go wrong, space colonies could become dystopian nightmares. Let's examine the economic reality. The Apollo program, which put 12 people on the moon for a total of about 80 hours of lunar surface time, cost approximately $280 billion in today's money. That's over $3 billion per person per hour on the lunar surface. A Mars mission would be orders of magnitude more expensive. Establishing a self-sustaining colony, the costs are literally incalculable because it would require technologies we don't have and infrastructure we can't build. The resource problem extends beyond just money. Earth's biosphere provides us with countless resources we take for granted. Every breath of air has been processed by plants and ocean phytoplankton. Every drop of water has been through the hydrological cycle countless times. Every bit of food depends on complex ecosystems involving millions of species. Recreating even a fraction of this complexity in space would require bringing a piece of Earth's biosphere with us, something that has proven impossible even in Earth-based experiments. Recent discoveries about the human microbiome add another layer of complexity. We aren't individual organisms, but walking ecosystems hosting trillions of bacteria, viruses, and other microorganisms. These symbionts are essential for digestion, immunity, and even mental health. Early studies show that the microbiome changes dramatically in space with potentially harmful consequences. We might literally fall apart at the microscopic level during long-duration spaceflight. The Van Allen radiation belts surrounding Earth demonstrate how perfectly positioned we are. These belts trap charged particles from the solar wind, creating zones of intense radiation. Any mission beyond low Earth orbit must pass through these belts. While brief passages are survivable with shielding, the radiation dose is significant. It's as if Earth is surrounded by a protective moat that also serves as a barrier to leaving. Solar storms present an acute danger that could end any deep space mission. The Carrington event of 1859 was a massive solar storm that caused telegraph systems worldwide to fail. In space, without Earth's magnetic field for protection, such an event would deliver lethal radiation doses to astronauts. These storms are unpredictable and can occur with little warning. A Mars mission caught in a major solar storm would face an impossible choice: continue to Mars and arrive with a dead crew, or turn back and likely run out of supplies before reaching Earth. The recent data from the Parker Solar Probe and Solar Orbiter missions have revealed that space weather is more complex and dangerous than previously thought. The solar wind isn't uniform but filled with turbulence, magnetic reversals, and high-energy particle streams. This invisible maelstrom would bombard any spacecraft, leaving Earth's protective magnetosphere, gradually degrading both equipment and human health. The timescales involved in space travel conflict with human psychology and society. A generation ship to another star would take thousands of years. The original crew would die knowing they'd never see the destination. Intermediate generations would live their entire lives in a tin can, serving a purpose they didn't choose. The final generation would arrive at a destination they'd never known they were traveling to. This is a recipe for social breakdown, not successful colonization. No real-time communication means no immediate help, no shared experiences, no participation in Earth's cultural evolution. Over time, this would create not just physical, but cultural and psychological divergence. Recent studies on confined environment psychology show alarming trends. The Mars 500 experiment simulating a Mars mission on Earth revealed that crew members gradually withdrew from social interaction, experienced sleep disorders, and showed signs of depression. One crew member essentially gave up staying in bed for days. This was in a simulation where they knew they could leave any time. Real space confinement with no escape possible would be exponentially worse. The manufacturing problem in space is often glossed over, but represents a fundamental barrier. On Earth, even simple items require complex supply chains involving thousands of companies across multiple continents. A basic electronic component might require rare earth elements from China, processing in Japan, assembly in Taiwan, and software from the United States. In space, you'd need to recreate entire industrial processes from scratch. 3D printing, often touted as a solution, can only work with specific materials and can't create complex electronics, medicines, or biological necessities. The discovery of perchlorates in Martian soil adds another nail in the coffin of Mars colonization dreams. These chemicals, found across Mars's surface, are toxic to humans, interfering with thyroid function and causing developmental problems. They make Martian soil not just unsuitable for growing food, but actively poisonous. Removing perchlorates would require massive amounts of water and energy, resources that would already be critically scarce on Mars. Every gram of Martian soil would need extensive processing before it could support any Earth-based life forms. Consider the cascade failures that would doom any space colony. On Earth, when something breaks, we have redundancy, repair capabilities, and, if necessary, evacuation options. In space, a single critical failure could trigger a chain reaction. Life support fails, forcing evacuation to a smaller area. Overcrowding stresses other systems. Secondary failures begin. Unlike Earth, where you can always step outside for fresh air, in space there's nowhere to go. The Columbia and Challenger disasters showed us how quickly things can go catastrophically wrong, and those missions lasted days, not years. The latest findings from lunar research paint a grim picture for moon bases. Lunar dust isn't like Earth dust. It's composed of sharp, glassy particles created by billions of years of micrometeorite impacts. It's incredibly abrasive, destroying seals, clogging filters, and damaging lungs if inhaled. Apollo astronauts reported that lunar dust was impossible to fully remove from their spacesuits. It has an electrostatic charge that makes it stick to everything. Over time, this dust would infiltrate and destroy any machinery, gradually breaking down any lunar habitat from the inside. Temperature extremes in space are beyond what most people comprehend. On the Moon, temperatures swing from 127 degrees Celsius in sunlight to minus 173 degrees Celsius in shadow. That's a 300-degree difference that happens instantly as you move from light to dark. Materials expand and contract, seals fail, metal fatigue accelerates. No Earth-based construction has ever dealt with such extremes continuously. Even our most advanced spacesuits can only handle these conditions for hours, not the years or decades needed for colonization. The recent revelations about space's effect on pharmaceuticals should terrify anyone considering long-term space travel. Medications degrade faster in space due to radiation exposure. Antibiotics lose potency. Pain medications become less effective. Some drugs actually become toxic as their molecular structure changes. The ISS constantly receives fresh medical supplies from Earth. A Mars mission or colony would watch their medical supplies gradually become useless or even dangerous, with no way to replenish them. Let me share something that space agencies don't widely publicize. Astronauts often experience what's called the space stupids. Cognitive function measurably declines in space. Simple tasks become difficult, decision-making slows, mistakes multiply. This isn't just fatigue, It's a fundamental change in brain function caused by fluid shifts, radiation exposure, and the stress of living in an alien environment. Now imagine making critical life or death decisions while your brain is operating at reduced capacity, millions of kilometers from any help. The protein folding problem in microgravity is a recently discovered phenomenon that could make long-term space habitation impossible. Proteins in our bodies need to fold into specific shapes to function properly. Research on the ISS shows that some proteins fold differently in microgravity, potentially leading to disorders similar to Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease. We're literally watching molecular processes that took billions of years to evolve on Earth fall apart in the absence of gravity. Water recycling in space, while technically possible, faces diminishing returns. The ISS recycles about 93% of water, but that remaining 7% must be resupplied from Earth. Over time, contaminants build up that current filtration systems can't remove. Heavy metals from equipment degradation, pharmaceutical residues, and biological waste products gradually accumulate. Without access to Earth's vast water cycle, any closed system will eventually become toxic. The latest data from Mars rovers reveals another sobering reality. Mars is seismically active. Mars quakes regularly shake the planet, some reaching magnitude 4.7, building structures that can withstand Mars quakes while also handling temperature extremes, radiation, and dust storms would require materials and construction techniques we simply don't possess. Every habitat would need to be over-engineered to a degree that makes transport from Earth economically impossible. The psychological impact of Earth loss cannot be overstated. Humans have an innate connection to nature called biophilia. We need green spaces, blue skies, and natural environments for mental health. Studies in prisons, hospitals, and urban environments consistently show that lack of natural access causes severe psychological distress. Antarctic researchers, despite being on Earth with eventual return guaranteed, experience winter over syndrome, cognitive decline, depression, and interpersonal conflicts. Space colonists would face something far worse: the permanent loss of everything that makes us human at a sensory and emotional level. Food production in space faces insurmountable challenges. Plants grown on the ISS are stunted, have altered nutritional content, and require far more resources than Earth farming. The lack of gravity affects root growth, water distribution, and cellular development. LED grow lights require enormous energy. Pollination must be done manually. Soil microbiomes essential for plant health don't develop properly. Even if we could grow food, it would lack the diversity needed for human health. Colonists would face gradual malnutrition even with sufficient calories. The latest research on extremophiles, organisms that thrive in extreme environments, might seem encouraging, but it actually highlights our limitations. These organisms evolved over millions of years to handle specific extreme conditions. Humans, in evolutionary terms, are the opposite of extremophils. We require an incredibly narrow range of temperature, pressure, radiation, and chemical conditions to survive. We're perfectly adapted to Earth and catastrophically unsuited for anywhere else. Recent computer simulations of generation ships reveal a terrifying truth: they're socially unstable. Using historical data from isolated communities and maritime voyages, researchers found that generation ships would likely experience catastrophic social breakdown within a few generations. Mutinies, resource wars, and cultural collapse are near certainties. The original mission would be forgotten or rejected. The ship would become a prison where the inmates have forgotten why they're imprisoned. The discovery of superbacteria on the ISS should concern everyone dreaming of space colonies. Bacteria like Bacillus cephensis have evolved to thrive in the space station's extreme environment. They're more resistant to antibiotics and radiation than their Earth counterparts. We're literally creating superbugs that could devastate a closed population with no access to advanced medical facilities or pharmaceutical manufacturing. A single evolved pathogen could wipe out an entire colony. Let's discuss the communication delay problem more deeply. Mars is between 4 and 24 light minutes from Earth, depending on orbital positions. This means any conversation takes between 8 and 48 minutes round trip. No real-time problem solving, no immediate emotional support, no shared experiences. Over time, this communication gap would create not just physical, but psychological and cultural isolation. Mars colonists wouldn't just be far from Earth, they'd become alien to it. The power requirements for space colonies are staggering and often underestimated. The ISS requires about 75 to 90 kilowatts of power, generated by solar panels covering 2,700 square meters. But the ISS is in constant sunlight for much of its orbit. Mars receives only 43% of the solar energy Earth does. Dust storms can reduce that to nearly zero for months. Nuclear power seems like a solution, but launching nuclear materials is incredibly dangerous, and maintaining nuclear reactors requires expertise and resources that wouldn't exist in a small colony. The mineral depletion problem in closed systems represents another fundamental barrier. On Earth, erosion, volcanic activity, and plate tectonics constantly refresh mineral availability. Rivers carry nutrients to the ocean, weather breaks down rocks into soil. In a space colony, every mineral would need to be carefully recycled, but recycling is never 100% efficient. Critical trace elements like zinc, copper, and selenium would gradually become locked in unavailable forms. Without geological processes to refresh them, colonies would face creeping malnutrition that no amount of food could fix. Recent studies on astronaut vision problems reveal a condition called spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, or SANS. Fluid shifts in microgravity increase pressure on the optic nerve, causing potentially permanent vision damage. About 70% of astronauts experience some degree of SANS. The longer the mission, the worse it gets. Imagine trying to maintain complex equipment or perform delicate tasks while gradually going blind, knowing that returning to Earth might not reverse the damage. The contamination risk between Earth and other worlds presents an ethical and practical nightmare. Planetary protection protocols exist because we could accidentally contaminate Mars with Earth microbes, destroying any chance of finding native Martian life. But the reverse is equally concerning. Bringing Martian samples or colonists back to Earth could introduce organisms our biosphere has no defense against. This bi-directional contamination risk means true interchange between Earth and space colonies might be forever impossible. Let me tell you about the carbonate-silicate cycle, something crucial that most people have never heard of. On Earth, this geological process regulates carbon dioxide levels and thus global temperature over millions of years. Carbon dioxide dissolves in rainwater, forms carbonic acid, weathers rocks, and eventually gets locked into seafloor sediments. Volcanic activity releases it back. This cycle has kept Earth's temperature stable enough for life for billions of years. Mars lacks this cycle, which is why it lost most of its atmosphere. Any terraforming attempt would fail without it. The latest findings from meteorite analysis show that cosmic radiation doesn't just damage living tissue, it fundamentally alters matter at the atomic level. Cosmic ray spallation can transform stable atoms into radioactive isotopes. Over decades of space travel, the very materials of your spacecraft would become increasingly radioactive. Metal would weaken, plastics would degrade, electronics would fail. Your habitat would literally decay around you with no way to stop it. Consider the childcare challenge in space. Pregnancy in microgravity would likely be fatal to both mother and child, based on current evidence. But even if we solved that through artificial gravity, How do you raise children in a confined space with no nature, no freedom to explore, no contact with extended family or broader society? Children need diverse experiences, social interaction, and the ability to take risks and learn from mistakes. A space colony would be like raising children in solitary confinement. The psychological damage would be catastrophic. The recent discovery of how space affects drug metabolism adds another terrifying dimension. The liver enzymes that process medications work differently in microgravity. Doses that are therapeutic on Earth could be toxic in space or ineffective. Pain medication might not work when you need it most. Anesthetics for surgery could fail or overdose. Every medical procedure would become a dangerous experiment with no way to predict outcomes. Bone loss in space isn't just about weakness, it fundamentally changes blood chemistry. As bones dissolve, they release calcium into the bloodstream. This leads to kidney stones, cardiovascular problems, and altered nerve function. Astronauts pass kidney stones at 10 times the normal rate. Imagine dealing with kidney stones while months away from medical help. The screaming agony, the potential for infection, the risk of kidney failure, all while your crew watches helplessly. The sleep disruption in space goes beyond simple insomnia. Without Earth's 24-hour light cycle, circadian rhythms collapse. Astronauts on the ISS see 16 sunrises and sunsets per day. Melatonin production becomes erratic. Sleep quality deteriorates, but it's worse than just being tired. Disrupted circadian rhythms affect hormone production, immune function, and mental health. Long-term circadian disruption is linked to diabetes, heart disease, and early death. Space literally destroys your biological clock. Let's examine the reality of asteroid mining, often proposed as a solution to resource scarcity. Yes, asteroids contain valuable minerals, but catching an asteroid requires matching its velocity using enormous amounts of fuel. Processing minerals in zero gravity without water or chemicals is nearly impossible. Transporting equipment to the asteroid would cost more than the minerals are worth. The technology to make asteroid mining economically viable doesn't exist, and may never exist given the energy requirements involved. The latest data on muscle atrophy in space is horrifying. It's not just that muscles get weaker, they fundamentally change at the cellular level. Slow-twitch muscle fibers, used for endurance, convert to fast-twitch fibers. Mitochondria, the powerhouses of cells, decrease in number and efficiency. Even with 2 hours of exercise daily, astronauts lose up to 20% of muscle mass in just 5 to 11 days. After months in space, they can barely walk upon return to Earth. Now imagine trying to work on Mars with 38% gravity after months of travel. Colonists would be physically invalids. The problem of spare parts illustrates the impossibility of space self-sufficiency. A modern spacecraft contains millions of components. Each has a failure rate. On Earth, we maintain vast warehouses of spare parts and can manufacture replacements. In space, you're limited to what you brought. 3D printing can't create microchips, bearings with precise tolerances, or specialized alloys. One critical component failure that you don't have a spare for means death. The probability of having every necessary spare part for a decades-long mission approaches 0. Recent studies on confined environment behavior reveal the third quarter phenomenon. In any long isolation, the third quarter is when psychological problems peak. Depression, anxiety, and conflict reach their worst. But space missions don't have quarters with endpoints. They're permanent. The psychological decline would be continuous with no relief, no hope of improvement, just grinding deterioration of mental health until breakdown becomes inevitable. The genetic bottleneck problem makes space colonization evolutionarily suicidal. A viable human population needs at least 10,000 individuals to maintain genetic diversity. Anything less faces inbreeding depression, increased birth defects, reduced fertility, and weakened immune systems. But launching 10,000 people into space? Impossible. Even if we could, maintaining genetic records and enforcing breeding programs would create a dystopian society that violates every principle of human rights and dignity. Space weather isn't just about solar storms. Galactic cosmic rays, high-energy particles from distant supernovae, constantly bombard everything outside Earth's magnetosphere. These particles are so energetic they pass through most shielding like it isn't there. They shatter DNA, cause cascading cellular damage, and may trigger early-onset Alzheimer's disease. Studies on mice exposed to simulated cosmic rays showed significant brain damage and cognitive decline. We're talking about radiation that doesn't just kill you, it destroys your mind first. The latest findings on biofilm formation in space should terrify anyone planning long-term missions. Biofilms, communities of bacteria that stick to surfaces, grow faster and thicker in microgravity. They clog water systems, corrode metal, and harbor dangerous pathogens. On Earth, we use harsh chemicals and physical scrubbing to remove them. In space, with limited water and no way to safely dispose of chemicals, biofilms would gradually coat every surface, turning life support systems into breeding grounds for disease. Let's talk about the false promise of terraforming. Mars has no magnetic field to protect an atmosphere from solar wind. Even if we could somehow create a breathable atmosphere, it would be stripped away over thousands of years. The energy required to restart Mars's core and generate a magnetic field is beyond anything humanity could produce, even with fusion power. Terraforming isn't just technically difficult, it violates fundamental physical constraints that no amount of technology can overcome. The psychological concept of Earth out of view phenomenon is something NASA takes seriously. When Earth disappears from view, astronauts report profound psychological distress. It's not just homesickness, it's existential terror. The one constant in human experience, the ground beneath our feet or the blue marble in the sky, vanishes. This triggers a crisis that no amount of training can fully prepare someone for. Mars colonists would never see Earth as more than a point of light, indistinguishable from stars. That psychological anchor to humanity would be severed forever. The recent discoveries about space adaptation syndrome reveal a terrifying cascade of failures in human physiology. It's not just nausea and disorientation, your entire vestibular system rewires itself in microgravity. The organs in your inner ear that detect motion and orientation stop functioning properly. Astronauts report feeling like they're perpetually falling, even after months in space. Some never fully adapt. Upon return to Earth, they can't walk straight, judge distances, or maintain balance. Now imagine landing on Mars after months of this neurological rewiring, trying to build a colony while your brain can't even tell which way is up. Let me explain the amino acid racemization problem, a ticking time bomb for space medicine. Amino acids in our bodies exist in specific left-handed configurations. Over time, especially when exposed to radiation, they flip to right-handed versions that our bodies can't use. This process, called racemization, normally takes decades. In space, cosmic radiation accelerates it dramatically. Proteins made with racemized amino acids don't work. Your body literally becomes incompatible with itself at the molecular level. No medical treatment exists for this. It's cellular aging on fast forward with no pause button. The manufacturing complexity problem extends beyond just making spare parts. Consider something as simple as a screw. On Earth, making a screw requires mining iron ore, smelting it into steel with specific carbon content, drawing it into wire, cutting threads with precise tolerances, and applying corrosion-resistant coatings. Each step requires different machines, chemicals, and expertise. In space, you'd need to recreate this entire industrial chain. One missing step, one lack of expertise, and you can't make that simple screw. Now multiply this by millions of components. Recent experiments with closed ecological systems reveal a phenomenon called ecosystem drift. Even carefully balanced systems with selected species gradually change in unpredictable ways. Some organisms thrive while others die out. Nutrient cycles shift. New ecological relationships emerge. The biosphere. 2 experiments saw oxygen levels plummet, soil chemistry change, and aggressive vines take over. If we can't maintain a stable ecosystem in Arizona with full Earth support, how could we possibly maintain one in space? The cosmic ray secondary shower effect is something that keeps radiation biologists awake at night. When a high-energy cosmic ray hits shielding, it doesn't just stop, it creates a cascade of secondary particles like neutrons and pions. These secondary particles can be more damaging than the original ray. Thick shielding actually makes the problem worse. It's like trying to stop a bullet with a wall that turns it into shrapnel. There's no good solution. Thin shielding lets radiation through. Thick shielding creates different radiation. You're damned either way. Consider the cultural preservation problem. Human culture isn't just art and music, it's accumulated wisdom about how to live, solve problems, and maintain society. It requires large populations to maintain and transmit. Small space colonies would experience rapid cultural drift and loss. Essential knowledge would be forgotten, skills would be lost. Within generations, colonists might lose the ability to maintain their own life support systems, not through mechanical failure, but through cultural amnesia. They'd be surrounded by technology they no longer understand. The latest research on space fungus should give everyone pause. Fungi on the ISS grow faster, spread more aggressively, and show increased virulence compared to Earth. The fungus, Aspergillus niger, common and usually harmless on Earth, becomes a serious threat in space. It eats through rubber seals, corrodes metal, and causes dangerous respiratory infections. Antifungal medications become less effective in microgravity. A fungal outbreak in a closed system could be catastrophic, and fungi are nearly impossible to completely eliminate. Time perception distortion in space adds another layer of psychological challenge. Without natural day-night cycles and seasonal changes, time becomes meaningless. Astronauts report that days blur together, weeks feel like months, and months feel like days simultaneously. This temporal disorientation affects memory formation, decision-making, and mental health. Long-term space colonists would lose one of the fundamental organizing principles of human consciousness, the sense of time passing. They'd exist in an eternal, featureless present. The mitochondrial dysfunction discovered in space-exposed organisms threatens the very basis of cellular energy. Mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells, don't function properly in microgravity and radiation. They produce less ATP, the energy currency of life, and more harmful free radicals. This cellular energy crisis affects every organ system. Hearts pump less efficiently, brains think less clearly, muscles waste away despite exercise. It's like trying to run a city on failing power plants that you can't repair or replace. Let's examine the false economy of space resources. Yes, the moon has helium-3 for fusion reactors, but we don't have working fusion reactors. Yes, asteroids have platinum, but the energy cost of retrieving it exceeds its value. The space economy assumes cheap access to space that physics forbids. Every kilogram launched costs thousands of dollars in energy alone. Every kilogram returned costs even more. The economics don't work and can't work without violating thermodynamics. Recent studies on epigenetic changes in space reveal hereditable damage. It's not just that space harms individuals, it damages their genetic legacy. DNA methylation patterns which control gene expression change in space. These changes can be passed to offspring. Children of space colonists might be born with their genes improperly regulated, predisposed to cancer, metabolic disorders, and premature aging. We could be creating generations of humans fundamentally damaged at the genetic level. The social isolation of space colonies would be unprecedented in human history. Even the most isolated Earth communities can theoretically leave, receive visitors, or communicate freely. Space colonists would be truly alone. No new faces, no unexpected encounters, no serendipity. The same small group forever. Studies on small isolated groups show inevitable relationship breakdown, faction formation, and social toxicity. In space, there's no escape valve. Conflicts would escalate until violence or breakdown becomes inevitable. The latest data on spaceplant growth reveals another agricultural impossibility. Plants grown in microgravity have chaotic root systems, confused gravity-sensing mechanisms, and altered gene expression. Their cell walls are weaker, their nutrient content is different. Seeds produced in space show reduced viability. We're discovering that plants, like humans, are fundamentally Earth organisms. The dream of space greenhouses feeding colonies is fantasy. The plants know they're in the wrong place and fail at the cellular level. Cosmic dust bombardment is a slow-motion disaster that would doom any space structure. Microscopic particles traveling at hypervelocity constantly impact anything in space. Each impact creates a tiny crater, degrades surfaces, and weakens materials. Over years, solar panels lose efficiency, windows become opaque, and structural integrity degrades. It's like being sandblasted in extreme slow motion. On Earth, we replace worn materials. In space, you'd watch your habitat slowly erode with no way to stop it. The uncanny valley effect of artificial environments causes deep psychological distress. Humans need environmental complexity, the randomness of wind, the patterns of clouds, the unexpected sight of wildlife. Space habitats would be eerily perfect and predictable, every surface engineered, every view the same. This environmental sterility triggers what researchers call nature deficit disorder, but magnified to an extreme that breaks the human psyche. We need chaos, beauty, and surprise to remain sane. Let me share the nightmare of cascading system failures. Complex systems don't fail gracefully, they collapse suddenly when pushed past critical thresholds. The ISS has experienced several near-catastrophic failures: computer crashes, coolant leaks, fire suppression malfunctions. Each was caught because Earth support could provide immediate expertise and guidance. In deep space, a similar failure cascade would be unstoppable. One system fails, overloading others. The crew rushes to fix it, making mistakes under pressure. More systems fail, panic sets in, death follows. The chromosome instability syndrome discovered in astronauts represents genetic chaos at the cellular level. Chromosomes in space-exposed cells show increased breakage, improper repair, and abnormal configurations. These aren't just random changes, they're the same patterns seen in advanced cancer cells. Your DNA literally begins falling apart, cell by cell. The body's repair mechanisms, evolved over billions of years on Earth, fail catastrophically in space. We're watching human genetics unravel in real time, and we have no way to stop it. Recent discoveries about the space exposome, the total of all environmental exposures, paint a picture of comprehensive biological assault. It's not just radiation or microgravity alone. It's the synergistic interaction of multiple stressors: radiation breaking DNA while microgravity prevents proper repair, psychological stress suppressing immune function while pathogens become more virulent, disrupted circadian rhythms while nutrition deteriorates. Each factor amplifies the others in a deadly spiral that no amount of medical intervention can fully address. The volatile organic compound problem in closed systems creates an invisible toxic soup. Every plastic, adhesive, and synthetic material releases trace chemicals. On Earth, ventilation dilutes them to safe levels. In a sealed spacecraft, they accumulate. The ISS maintains over 200 trace contaminants in its air. Some interact to form new compounds, others concentrate on human tissue. Long-term exposure causes neurological damage, liver dysfunction, and cancer. Yet we can't build spacecraft without these materials. We're poisoning ourselves with the very substances that keep us alive. Let's discuss the gravitational muscle memory crisis. Human movement relies on unconscious calculations based on Earth gravity. Every gesture, every step, every reach is calibrated to 1G. In different gravity, these programs malfunction catastrophically. Astronauts returning from 6-month missions report reaching for objects and missing, pouring water and splashing, sitting down and falling. Their brains contain movement software for the wrong planet. Mars colonists would need to completely reprogram their nervous systems, then reprogram again if they ever returned to Earth. The latest findings on spaceflight-associated kidney disease should terrify anyone considering long missions. Kidneys in microgravity don't just form more stones, they fundamentally restructure. Tubules that filter blood change shape. Cellular transport mechanisms fail. Protein starts appearing in urine. Toxins that should be eliminated accumulate in blood. Dialysis in space would be nearly impossible with current technology. Kidney failure means death, slow and painful, as your body poisons itself with its own waste. Consider the entropic degradation of closed systems. The second law of thermodynamics isn't just a suggestion, it's an absolute constraint. Every closed system tends toward disorder. On Earth, we fight entropy with vast energy inputs from the sun and geological processes. A space colony would be like trying to keep a sandcastle intact while the tide comes in. Everything breaks down. Order requires constant energy input. But where does that energy come from when solar panels degrade and nuclear fuel depletes? Entropy always wins. The discovery of space-induced autoimmune disorders adds another layer to our biological incompatibility with space. The immune system, confused by the alien environment, begins attacking the body's own tissues. Thyroid disorders, inflammatory conditions, and autoimmune hepatitis appear in astronauts. The body literally rejects itself in space. Immunosuppressive drugs might help, but would increase infection risk in an environment where pathogens are already more dangerous. It's a deadly catch-22 with no good solution. Recent neurocognitive studies reveal that space doesn't just affect thinking, it fundamentally rewires the brain. Neural pathways that took decades to establish on Earth dissolve and reform in microgravity. Skills disappear. Personalities change. Astronauts report feeling like different people in space, unable to access parts of themselves they've always known. This isn't psychological, it's neurological. The brain you launch with isn't the brain you'd land with. Who would you become after years in space? Would you even recognize yourself? The power law distribution of critical failures means catastrophe is mathematically inevitable. Small problems are common and manageable. Medium problems are rare but survivable. Catastrophic problems are very rare but unsurvivable. Over time, the probability of experiencing at least one catastrophic failure approaches 100%. On Earth, we rebuild after disasters. In space, one catastrophic failure ends everything. It's not a question of if, but when, and the when gets sooner the longer you stay. Let me explain the protein crystallization paradox. Many biological processes depend on proteins forming specific crystal structures. In microgravity, proteins crystallize differently or not at all. This affects everything from enzyme function to cellular repair mechanisms. Drug manufacturing becomes impossible. You can't create pharmaceutical compounds without proper crystallization. Even basic biological processes like bone formation depend on protein crystals. Life as we know it requires gravity at the molecular level. This isn't something we can engineer around. The psychological phenomenon of Earth dreams haunts long-duration astronauts. They dream of wind, rain, and soil with increasing frequency and vividness. Some report waking up convinced they can smell grass or hear birds. These aren't pleasant dreams. They're torment, reminders of a world left behind. The dreams become more intense over time, not less. The psyche rebels against the artificial environment, retreating into fantasy that makes reality even more unbearable. Imagine decades of dreaming about a home you can never return to. Recent data on cellular senescence in space shows accelerated aging at the most fundamental level. Cells have built-in division limits called the Hayflick limit. In space, cells reach this limit faster. They stop dividing, stop functioning properly, but don't die. These senescent cells accumulate, secreting inflammatory compounds that damage surrounding tissue. It's cellular aging on fast forward. A 40-year-old astronaut might have the cellular age of a 60-year-old after just 1 year in space. Decades in space would mean biological collapse. The interplanetary communication breakdown goes beyond mere delay. As colonies diverge culturally and linguistically, communication becomes impossible even without time lag. Languages evolve rapidly in isolation. New terms emerge for experiences Earth humans don't have. Old words lose meaning. Within generations, Earth and Mars humans might struggle to understand each other. Add communication delays and you have civilizations that can't meaningfully interact. They'd become alien to each other, united only by DNA and distant history. The trace element depletion cascade represents slow starvation invisible to standard nutrition metrics. Humans need dozens of trace elements in tiny quantities: selenium for thyroid function, molybdenum for enzyme production, cobalt for vitamin B12 synthesis. In closed systems, these elements get locked into unavailable forms or lost through waste processing. You might have plenty of calories and still starve at the cellular level. Blood tests would show declining levels of obscure but essential elements with no way to replace them. Consider the social knowledge problem. Human society works because millions of specialists maintain civilization's complexity. Doctors, engineers, farmers, teachers, artists, each preserves and transmits essential knowledge. A space colony of even thousands would lack critical specializations. Who maintains the fusion reactor while also teaching children, while also performing surgery? Knowledge would be lost faster than it could be transmitted. Within generations, colonists would be surrounded by technology they couldn't maintain, understand, or replace. The latest research on space radiation hormesis, the theory that low radiation doses might be beneficial, actually proves the opposite. While Earth organisms evolved with background radiation and might benefit from small doses, space radiation is qualitatively different. Heavy ion radiation causes clustered DNA damage that Earth evolution never encountered. It's not just more radiation, it's the wrong kind of radiation. Our cellular repair mechanisms literally don't recognize the damage pattern and fail to fix it properly. The microplastic generation problem in closed systems represents a slow-motion poisoning we're only beginning to understand. Every piece of equipment, every fabric, every seal gradually sheds microscopic plastic particles. On Earth, these disperse into the environment. In a spacecraft, they accumulate in air, water, and eventually human tissue. Recent studies show microplastics cross the blood-brain barrier, lodge in organs, and trigger inflammation. Space colonies would marinate in an ever-thickening soup of their own material decay, with no way to filter particles smaller than detection limits. Let me tell you about the terrifying reality of space surgery. On Earth, surgery relies on gravity to keep organs in place, blood flowing downward, and surgical tools behaving predictably. In microgravity, blood pools in floating spheres, organs drift out of position. Surgeons can't brace themselves for precise movements. Even simple procedures become nightmarish. The ISS medical kit includes bone saws and scalpels, but astronauts train to basically stabilize injuries until evacuation to Earth. Real surgery? Nearly impossible. A burst appendix or complicated childbirth would mean certain death. The quantum decoherence effect on biological systems adds another layer to our cosmic incompatibility. Quantum processes in biology, from photosynthesis to possibly consciousness itself, evolved in Earth's specific electromagnetic environment. Cosmic radiation and the absence of Earth's magnetic field create quantum noise that disrupts these delicate processes. Bird navigation fails in artificial magnetic fields. Plant efficiency drops. Human consciousness itself might depend on quantum coherence that space destroys. We could be quantum creatures in a classical void. Recent discoveries about the gut-brain axis in space reveal cascading dysfunction. The vagus nerve connecting the gut to brain behaves abnormally in microgravity. Gut bacteria, already disrupted by space conditions, send altered chemical signals. This affects mood, cognition, and decision-making. Astronauts report personality changes they can't control. Depression and anxiety worsen despite psychological support. Your gut literally rebels against space, and it takes your mind with it. No amount of probiotics or therapy can fix a fundamental environmental mismatch. The oxidative stress cascade in space represents cellular destruction in slow motion. Free radicals, produced by radiation and metabolic dysfunction, overwhelm the body's antioxidant defenses. They damage DNA, proteins, and cellular membranes. On Earth, we evolved robust antioxidant systems. In space, these systems fail catastrophically. Vitamin supplements help marginally but can't compensate for the radical production rate. Every breath generates molecules that destroy you from within. It's like rusting from the inside out, and there's no way to stop it. Consider the reproduction crisis beyond just pregnancy. Recent studies suggest space exposure damages reproductive cells at the epigenetic level. Sperm motility drops. Egg quality deteriorates. Even if fertilization occurs, the embryo inherits damaged genetic programming. Multiple generations would accumulate these defects. We're not just talking about individual infertility, but species-level reproductive collapse. Space doesn't just kill individuals, it ends bloodlines. The social breakdown timeline follows predictable patterns. Mission psychologists identify phases: initial euphoria, then adjustment, then depression, then breakdown. But these models assume eventual return to Earth. Permanent settlement removes the endpoint that makes suffering bearable. Without hope of return, depression becomes despair. Conflict escalates without resolution. Studies on isolated communities show that after about 18 months, social cohesion irreversibly deteriorates. Space colonies would be pressure cookers with no release valve. The latest data on space neuroplasticity reveals brains desperately trying to adapt to an impossible environment. Neural networks rewire chaotically, seeking patterns that don't exist in microgravity. Spatial processing breaks down. Memory formation fails. Some astronauts develop synesthesia, seeing sounds, hearing colors, as their brains misfire. This isn't adaptation, it's neurological chaos. The plastic brain, usually our greatest asset, becomes a liability as it reshapes itself for an environment that defies every evolutionary assumption. Let me explain the metabolic trap of space existence. Human metabolism runs on circadian rhythms, gravitational cues, and atmospheric pressure. Remove these and cellular energy production fails. Mitochondria produce less ATP while consuming the same resources. It's like running an engine that burns fuel but produces less power. Everything becomes harder: thinking, moving, healing. The body enters an energy deficit it can't escape. Colonists would exist in perpetual exhaustion, too tired to maintain the systems keeping them alive. The compound probability problem makes long-term space survival mathematically impossible. If life support is 99% reliable daily, that's 97% reliable monthly, 69% yearly, over a decade, 29%, over a century, effectively zero. And that's assuming no degradation, perfect maintenance, and no unexpected failures. Real reliability is lower. Multiple systems compound the problem. When survival requires thousands of systems working perfectly forever, failure is guaranteed. Mathematics itself forbids permanent space settlement. Recent studies on the exposome-genome interaction show that space doesn't just damage DNA, it fundamentally alters how genes are read. Histones, the proteins, DNA wraps around, change configuration in microgravity. Genes that should be active become silent. Genes that should be silent activate. The instruction manual of life becomes scrambled. Drugs designed for Earth gene expression don't work. Metabolic pathways fail. We're watching the software of life corrupt in real time, and we have no debugger for DNA. The cultural transmission failure in small populations ensures knowledge death. UNESCO estimates maintaining human culture requires minimum populations of 50,000 to 100,000. Below this, specialized knowledge disappears. Languages simplify, skills vanish. Art degrades, music loses complexity. Within generations, space colonists wouldn't just be physically different, they'd be culturally impoverished. The rich tapestry of human achievement would unravel into survival-focused barbarism. Consider the pharmaceutical decay problem. Medications have shelf lives on Earth. In space, radiation accelerates breakdown. Complex molecules fragment. Active ingredients become toxic byproducts. The ISS regularly receives fresh supplies. A Mars colony would watch its pharmacy become a poison cabinet. Cancer drugs would cause cancer. Antibiotics would feed infections. Pain medications would cause pain. The very substances meant to heal would harm, with no way to synthesize replacements. The vestibular-ocular reflex breakdown creates a special kind of hell. This reflex keeps your vision stable when your head moves. In microgravity, it malfunctions. The world swims and lurches with every movement. Reading becomes nauseating. Fine motor tasks become impossible. Some astronauts never readapt, living in a world that won't stop spinning. Imagine trying to build a civilization while perpetually motion sick, your eyes and inner ear in permanent disagreement about reality. Let's examine the false hope of artificial gravity. Yes, spinning habitats could theoretically create centrifugal force mimicking gravity, but the engineering challenges are staggering. The structure must be enormous to avoid debilitating Coriolis effects. It must spin continuously for decades without maintenance. Bearings wear out, seals fail. And the gradient problem, your head experiences different force than your feet, causes its own medical issues. We can't even build reliable rotating restaurants on Earth. A rotating space habitat is fantasy. The immunological desert of space creates vulnerability to previously harmless organisms. Earth's biosphere trains our immune systems through constant low-level challenges. Space's sterile environment causes immune atrophy. T cells forget their programming. Antibody production drops. When infection finally arrives, and it will, the body responds inappropriately. Either it underreacts, allowing infection to spread, or overreacts, triggering deadly cytokine storms. Colonists would die from bacteria their Earth ancestors wouldn't even notice. Recent discoveries about cosmic ray muon flux add another radiation danger. Muons, heavy cousins of electrons, penetrate deeper than other radiation. They cause damage throughout the body, not just at the surface. Shielding that stops other particles barely affects muons. They trigger deep tissue cancers, bone marrow destruction, and neural damage. Every second in space, billions pass through you. Each leaves a trail of cellular destruction. It's death by a billion tiny wounds, too small to see but too numerous to heal. The telomere crisis in space represents aging at warp speed. Telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes, shorten with each cell division. In space, they shorten dramatically faster. But here's the terrifying part. When they return to normal gravity, they don't just stabilize, they overcorrect, becoming shorter than they should be. It's like space steals years from your life that you can never get back. A year in space might age your cells by 5 years. A decade, you'd return biologically elderly if you returned at all. Let me tell you about the catastrophic protein misfolding cascade. Proteins must fold into precise three-dimensional shapes to function. Space conditions, radiation, microgravity, temperature fluctuations cause widespread misfolding. Misfolded proteins aggregate, forming toxic clumps similar to those in Alzheimer's disease. But unlike Earth, where cells can sometimes clear these aggregates, space conditions make clearance impossible. Your cells fill with biological garbage that poisons them from within. It's molecular suffocation, slow but inevitable. The sensory deprivation of space goes beyond simple boredom. Humans need sensory complexity, the rustle of leaves, the smell of rain, unexpected sounds and sights. Space offers monotonous artificial stimuli. Studies show that sensory deprivation causes hallucinations, paranoia, and eventual psychosis. Astronauts report phantom smells and sounds. Some hear knocking on the hull where no one could be. The mind, desperate for input, creates its own reality. Long-term space residents wouldn't just be isolated, they'd be living in self-generated madness. Recent findings on the methylation clock, our biological age marker, show space accelerates aging unpredictably. Different organs age at different rates. Your heart might be 50 while your liver is 70 and your brain is 40. This biological chaos disrupts every system. Medications dosed for one age won't work for organs at different ages. It's not just premature aging, it's chaotic aging, body parts failing in unpredictable sequences. The carbon cycle breakdown in closed systems represents slow suffocation. On Earth, carbon flows between atmosphere, oceans, soil, and life in vast cycles. In space habitats, carbon gets trapped in unusable forms. Carbon dioxide scrubbers gradually fail. Organic waste doesn't fully decompose. Carbon that should nourish plants becomes locked in toxic compounds. The very element life depends on becomes a prison. You'd watch your ecosystem slowly strangle on its own waste. Consider the nightmare of multi-generational genetic drift. Small populations experience rapid genetic change through founder effects and bottlenecks. Harmful mutations that would disappear in large populations become fixed. Within 10 generations, space colonists might be so genetically distinct they couldn't breed with Earth humans. But unlike beneficial evolution over millions of years, this would be rapid degeneration. Each generation weaker, sicker, less capable than the last. Evolution in reverse. The metabolic syndrome epidemic in space reveals bodies shutting down systemically. Insulin resistance develops rapidly in microgravity. Blood sugar regulation fails. Cholesterol metabolism breaks. Astronauts develop diabetes-like symptoms without diabetes. The body's entire energy management system collapses. Exercise doesn't help. The problem is environmental, not behavioral. Space colonists would face inevitable metabolic collapse, dying slowly of diseases that barely exist on Earth. The latest research on space-induced chronic inflammation shows the body in constant crisis mode. Inflammatory markers skyrocket and stay elevated. This chronic inflammation damages every organ: heart, brain, liver, kidneys. It accelerates aging, triggers autoimmune disease, and impairs healing. Anti-inflammatory drugs provide temporary relief, but cause their own problems with long-term use. The body literally attacks itself in a misguided attempt to adapt to an impossible environment. Let me explain the mineral redeposition nightmare. Mineral. In microgravity, minerals leached from bones don't just disappear, they deposit in soft tissues where they don't belong. Calcium accumulates in kidneys, heart valves, and blood vessels. Iron deposits in the liver and brain. These mineral deposits are permanent, causing organ dysfunction that persists even after return to gravity. Your skeleton dissolves and reforms inside your organs. It's architectural vandalism at the cellular level. The quantum biology breakdown extends to photosynthesis itself. Plants use quantum coherence to efficiently convert light to energy. This delicate quantum dance fails in space's radiation environment. Photosynthesis becomes less efficient. Plants produce less oxygen, grow slower, and require more resources. The foundation of any ecosystem, primary production, fundamentally breaks down. You can't build a biosphere on broken physics. Recent studies on the blood-brain barrier in space show catastrophic breakdown. This barrier protects your brain from toxins in blood. In microgravity, it becomes permeable. Substances that should never reach brain tissue cross freely. Medications affect the brain unpredictably. Toxins accumulate in neural tissue. The brain, Earth's most protected organ, becomes vulnerable to every chemical insult. Cognitive decline isn't just likely, it's inevitable. The social memory extinction in small populations ensures cultural death. Stories, skills, and knowledge require multiple carriers to survive. Below critical population thresholds, cultural elements randomly disappear. One death erases irreplaceable expertise. Children grow up missing fundamental knowledge their parents assumed they'd learn from others. The colony's collective intelligence drops with each generation. They'd forget not just how to maintain technology, but why they're in space at all. Consider the perpetual energy crisis. Every joule of energy in space must be generated, stored, and carefully used. Solar panels degrade, nuclear fuel depletes, batteries wear out. But energy needs only increase. Life support, manufacturing, repair, heating, cooling, communication. The second law of thermodynamics guarantees energy systems degrade faster than they can be replaced. It's a one-way slide toward darkness and cold. Entropy doesn't care about human ambition. The developmental biology crisis means no normal childhood in space. Children need gravity for proper bone development, varied environments for neural development, and social diversity for psychological development. Space children would be physically stunted, cognitively impaired, and socially damaged. They'd never develop normal human capabilities. Creating a generation of disabled humans isn't colonization, it's cruelty. No ethical society would condemn children to such existence. And now we reach the heart of why we'll never leave Earth. It's not just the radiation, the gravity, the distances, or the biology. It's that we are Earth. Every atom in your body except hydrogen was forged in dying stars and delivered to Earth billions of years ago. Every cell evolved here through billions of years of trial and error. Every thought emerges from neural patterns shaped by Earth's specific conditions. We aren't residents of Earth. We are Earth, temporarily organized into conscious forms. The cosmic perspective doesn't make Earth less special, it makes it infinitely precious. In all our searching, we've found no other place even remotely capable of supporting us. The conditions that allow human existence are so precise, so interdependent, that recreating them elsewhere isn't just difficult, it's effectively impossible. Earth isn't our cradle to be abandoned. It's our only home in a vast, hostile universe. This reality shouldn't depress you, it should inspire you. If Earth is all we have, then every forest matters. Every ocean matters, every atmosphere molecule matters. The dream of backup planets has become an excuse for environmental destruction. We'll just go somewhere else becomes permission to destroy the only somewhere we'll ever have. But there is no somewhere else. There is only here, only now, only Earth. Look at the photos of Earth from space, that pale blue dot suspended in darkness. Every human who ever lived, everyone you've ever known, every story ever told happened on that tiny sphere, not despite its smallness, but because of its perfection. The exact right distance from the right star, with the right atmosphere, the right magnetic field, the right chemistry for life. The odds of this combination are so astronomical that Earth might be unique not just in our galaxy but in the observable universe. The engineers and dreamers who speak of Mars colonies and generation ships aren't wrong to dream. That curiosity, that drive to explore, defines us as human. But we must ground our dreams in reality. The same science that reveals the cosmos reveals our limitations. We are not gods who can reshape worlds. We are Earth life, inseparable from this planet's biosphere. Our greatest adventure isn't leaving Earth, it's learning to live sustainably on it. Every dollar spent on Mars colony fantasies could restore ecosystems here. Every brilliant mind dedicated to terraforming could help save the only habitable planet we know exists. The technology to maintain life in space could help us maintain life on Earth. The discipline required for space resource management could teach us to manage Earth's resources. The overview effect that transforms astronauts could transform humanity if we listen. We stand at a crossroads. We can waste precious resources chasing impossible dreams of escape, or we can dedicate ourselves to the only world we'll ever have. The choice seems obvious when you understand the science. Earth isn't just where we happen to evolve, it's the only place we can exist. The universe hasn't trapped us here. It's given us the only paradise in an infinite desert. So the next time you look at the stars, don't see destinations you'll never reach. See the vast emptiness that makes Earth precious. When you breathe, appreciate air pressure evolution spent billions of years teaching you to use. When you walk, feel gravity holding you to the only surface you'll ever call home. You are not a prisoner on Earth. You are Earth, blessed with consciousness to appreciate the only miracle in the cosmos, life on this perfect, irreplaceable world. The stars will remain forever out of reach. But Earth, this magnificent Earth, is ours to cherish, protect, and pass on to generations who will also dream of the stars but live, love, and die on the only home humanity will ever know. We are not destined for the stars. We are destined for Earth. And that's not a limitation. It's the most profound gift the universe could give. We already live in heaven. We just need the wisdom to see it and the courage to protect it. If you made this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed this video, I am sure you will love this other one at the left side of the screen. This is why we will never reach Mars. In this video, we explore the brutal realities of Mars missions, from deadly cosmic radiation, toxic Martian dust, and bone-crushing gravity problems to the insurmountable challenges of food, water, and life support on the red planet. See you there.